All right, welcome to chapter 5. We're going to talk about the time value of money and intermediate accounting. This is a super important topic because this is something that is going to have a lot of power, and that's the first thing we're going to talk about here when it comes to the time value of money. Time is a powerful tool, something that you cannot just go get more of. So we want to use time to our advantage, and that can be with what you're doing in your daily routine. It can also mean what you're doing with your money as far as investments. So let's look at what the time value of money is. Time value of money is the idea that a dollar that you have right now is worth more than a dollar you'll receive in the future. That's because you can invest and use that dollar today to earn interest. Or otherwise grow its purchasing power for the future before that future date. So, in other words, your money has earning potential so that its value changes over time. So, if you have a dollar now, you can make a decision with that dollar right now that can help it to be worth more later. If you're guaranteed a dollar 5 years from now, it is not worth as much to you because you don't have that power in the meantime. So let's break that down into different examples. We'll start with this investment opportunity. If you have $1,000, you could put it in a savings account or an investment, and let's say you earn 5% interest on that $1,000. It will become $1,050 in a year from now because of the 5% interest. So you invested $1,000 and then it earns 5%. So the future date, it's worth $1,050. So your $1,000 today is worth more than a year from now. You see why that $1,000 is worth more now than if somebody said they'll give you $1,000 a year from now? Because it could have been earning interest in the meantime. A simple interest calculation would just be principal times the interest rate times the number of years, how much time you're going to have it, or maybe it's a partial year. And that just gives you the simple interest. So that $1,000 times 5% invested for 1 year is going to earn you $50. This is a very simple formula, but unfortunately, it doesn't take something super important into account, and that is called compound interest. Compound interest is where our money is going to be growing and working for us. So it's actually called the eighth wonder of the world. Can you guess who called this the eighth wonder of the world? It was actually, this is a very young picture of him, but it was actually Albert Einstein that said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. So let's talk about what compound interest is. And okay, so it is calculated on the initial principal and any interest that accumulated from previous periods. So we initially put in $1,000, then we earn $50. So then the next time that we earn interest, it's going to be on the new balance of $1,050. So we have that $1,000 earns 5%. What if it earns 5% every year for 5 years? This is what it would look like. Okay, you started with $1,000, you earn 5%, which is $50. So now you have $1,050. Year 2, you're starting with $1,050, it earns 5%. So now your interest is more in the second year. It's $52.50. So then at the end of that year, you have the 1,050 plus that $52.50 that you earned. So now your new balance going into year 3 is $1,102.50. So then you earn 5% on that balance, so you get $55.13, which increases your balance more. In year 4, you earn interest on the higher balance, which increases your balance even more. So by the time you get to year 5, you are earning $60.78 as opposed to the $50 you earned in year 1. So, in other words, your interest is earning interest. So, that $1,000 turns into $1,276 at the end of 5 years. So, this is much more than the simple interest calculation. All right. So, let's say instead of $1,000, we did the exact same thing, but we invested just one more zero, no big deal. We invested $10,000. So if we invested $10,000 instead of $50 of interest, we would have gotten $500 of interest. And instead of having a balance of 1,050, we now have a balance of 10,500. And then that just grows and grows so that now our balance after 5 years is $12,763. So very significant with the more money that you have. If you just invest $100, I mean, sure, it's something at least, right? Invest anything we can. But the more we can invest, the better. So this is at 5% interest. So what if we invested the exact same thing, but at 8% interest, which is not completely out of the ordinary if you find the right investment, like a mutual fund. So you invest $10,000, but this time at 8% interest. After 5 years, it grows not to the $12,700, but to almost $15,000 because of 3 extra interest points. So something really to consider there. And if you want to learn more about how all of this works, I actually have a different YouTube channel called Money Magic Revealed, and it has shorter videos that talk more about real world money and how to make your personal finances work for you. So I'll put a link to the video about compound interest in the comments of this video in case you're interested in that. So a little bit more we'll talk about in this video. The effective interest rate. So with what we were looking at in those past examples, that was compounding annually. Each year, the bank, let's say, paid interest. So that's what we have on the top line. If we have an interest rate of 12%, and we do that because it makes it really easy with 12 months, annually at 12%, we get it once a year, we get 12% each time. What if it paid it twice a year, semi-annually? 12% is the annual interest rate, but they pay it, let's say, June 30th and December 31st. So they're splitting it in half. So we're getting 6% in June, 6% in December. If it's quarterly, we're going to take that 12%, divide it by the 4 quarters. They're going to get 3% in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and then quarter 4. And if you were able to find an investment that pays it monthly, you're going to take that 12% annual rate divided by the 12 months. You're going to get 1% interest each and every month. So why does that matter? Well, here's the thing. If you are getting paid out the cash, let's say quarterly, you then have this extra payment that is going to compound in the second quarter. And then in the third quarter, you already have a higher balance and it will compound in the third quarter, then that will grow and compound in the fourth quarter. Whereas if it only compounds, it only pays out interest every year, then you only have the chance for that balance to grow once a year. So the more often that it compounds, the more money you are going to have. So that's something really valuable to look for. So let's look at an example. We've got Alexandra. She saved over $400 every month for 2 years from her burger flipping job. She finally invested the balance of $10,000 in a mutual fund. You can also learn about mutual funds in that video, in that YouTube channel I was talking about. I'll put the link there for that as well, because that could be a great investment opportunity for you. So she puts the $10,000 in a mutual fund that is going to be yielding. Yielding means a return. It means interest of 12% compounded quarterly. So she's not just getting 12% on the $10,000 once, one big payment. They're going to break it into 4 payments. So 4 3% payments. So how much will Alexandra's balance be at year end? And then we'll see what is the effective interest rate. Okay, so the first quarter, she gets paid 3% because we took 12% divided by 4 quarters. So she gets 3% each quarter. So 3% times 10,000 adds $300 to her balance. So now she has $10,300. Okay, so then when she goes into the second quarter, she's getting 3% on the $10,300. And that keeps growing and happening. And then at the end of the year, she did not just get the extra 12%. She got the 3% broken out, and then it compounded each quarter. So it grew to $11,255. If it didn't compound quarterly and it just did it once a year, she would have had $11,200. Hey, I'll take an extra $55, especially now with inflation. That could be one simple mill out, right? So the more often it compounds, the better. Unless this is a payment you're making, then that would not be a good situation. The effective interest rate is something you're going to need to know how to calculate. The effective interest rate, you take $1,255, which is what she earned in interest. See, if we go down to the final number, the $11,255 minus the $10,000 she invested, her total interest was $1,255. Divide that by the initial investment, and her actual effective interest rate, the actual amount of interest she got, was 12.5%. So she got more interest because it compounded more often. So that's a formula you're going to want to know. All right. So we're going to touch on the future value and the present value, and then we'll dig way more into that in the future videos. Future value, future videos. So the future value of a single amount is the amount of money that a dollar will grow to at some point in the future. So you have money now, and it's going to grow to whatever its future value is, right? So the formula for that looks like this. And maybe you love formulas, maybe you don't. And I'll tell you, this is as simple as the formulas get in the time value of money. They get way more complicated as we go further and further and further into learning about the time value of money. So we've got this formula, and it'll get more and more confusing, but there are a few different things that we can use. One, let me tell you, there are functions in your calculator. Two, there are functions in Excel. And three is what we're going to focus on, and that is going to be a chart that we are easily able to use. And you are going to need to know how to use the time value charts as you calculate these different amounts. So let's jump into the first time value chart, because if you're not a fan of formulas, then you might want to know an easier way. So silly, I know. Okay, I got you. All right, let's look at Alexandra's investment of $10,000. Assume it earns that 12% compounding annually, so once a year for 3 years. Using the future value chart, we see she's got $10,000. It's going to grow into the $11,200 after 1 year, then the $12,554, then the $14,049. So the way we're going to do this is we are going to use this future value chart, and this is just a little snippet of it. So I'm only showing you interest from 7 to 12%, but you are going to have capabilities. You can go online and find this chart. It's likely in your book or in your homework that you can find these charts all the way from 1% or even below 1% up to maybe 15 or 20%. And then it will show all the different periods. So each period is when it compounds. So here she gets 12% a year. So we would go over to 12%, and it's for 3 years. So what we do is we take that factor, 12%, 3 years. Our factor is 1.40493. We just take the initial investment of $10,000 times that factor, and it gives us what it would be worth at the end of the 3 periods. Now, if we did this for the quarterly payments, like we saw Alexandra have in the last example, we would have gone to 4 periods because it's 4 quarters, but we would not have gone all the way over to 12%. We would have gone to the 3% because she gets 3% each period if we're talking about compounding quarterly. So again, all you have to do with this chart is take the initial investment times the factor that relates to it. We are going to see many different charts. We're going to see 6 different charts and different ways to use them. So it's going to be super important for you to understand which chart to use and when to use it. But for the most case, you're just going to take the initial investment or the loan amount, multiply it times the factor, and then it will show you the amount. This makes sense, right? If we invested it for 3 years at 12%, we get that factor, 1.40493, times the $10,000 investment, it grows to $14,000. That makes sense. If you get some crazy number like $40,000, you obviously use the wrong chart. If you get a number less than your initial investment, you use the wrong chart. So this is going to take you calculating it and then stepping back and saying, does that make sense, before you submit any answers. Let's briefly look at present value as well, and then I'll make the rest of it in separate videos. So what if it works backwards? Okay, we have the same investment. Here's the formula for the present value, already getting slightly harder, but trust me, they get way worse. And we want to find out, we know what the future value factor is. We know that it is 14,049 is what we want it to grow into, but how do we find out what the initial investment is? So let's just say Alexandra said, I need $14,049 in 3 years. I'm going to be able to invest it at 12%, compounding annually. How much do I need to invest today? So we know the future value. We are trying to find the present value. So in that case, we would go to a present value chart. This is the present value of 12% interest for 3 years. And see, this time it gives us less than 1. We take our our $14,049 times the factor of 0.71178. Then when we multiply that, it gives us 10,000. Again, we step back, we look at it. Okay, if I end up at $14,049 and I'm earning 12% interest over 3 years, would it make sense that I would just need to invest $10,000? Yes, that sounds right. If you get 40,000, you definitely did something wrong. I hope you didn't invest 40,000 and it shrunk down to 14. If you get 2,000, no, that is very unrealistic to get that kind of return. So you want to look at it and analyze, does this make sense? So the future value would be lower than 1 because it had time to grow up to that amount. And you can see that if you just did it for 1 year, it's much higher. And then the longer you had it invested, the lower it is. Because the further out that you're like, okay, I need $50,000 in 10 years for a down payment for a house. How much do I invest today? Well, I got 10 years to let it grow. So the higher interest I can make, the less I need to invest today. So that's how this works. It helps us to see how much should I invest or how much will my investment turn into. And it gets way more complicated, so I'm going to do that in the future videos. Make sure you subscribe to these videos so that you don't miss out on other content that could be super helpful to you in these courses. And again, I'll put the links to that Money Magic Revealed channel for compound interest and for mutual funds along with this video.